What's up, everybody? Today, we're going to get ready for The Mandalorian Season 3, and I want to start that off with what you need to know going into the long-awaited return of the show. Let's get into it. So with The Mandalorian having been off air for over 2 years now, I figured we'd get caught up real quick. We of course have the memorable ending to Season 2, where Luke Skywalker returned once again and in one of the most powerful scenes in the history of the franchise. He then took Grogu from there to train with him to become a Jedi once again, and now for some fans, this is the last time that you saw your little green friend. But it is not the last time he appeared, as we saw him return to Din Djarin in the Book of Boba Fett, which many now consider to be The Mandalorian Season 2.5. However, from the footage that's been released from Lucasfilm for Season 3, it's pretty clear his Force abilities improved in his time with Luke. And I know a lot of people feel that the time was too short, and while I agree with that sentiment from a point of a fan, because I'd always love to see more Luke, especially as the de-aging technology improves, there's also the fact of the matter that Grogu went there not to learn new abilities, but to rehash the abilities that he had already learned during his time at the Jedi Temple. And in case you don't know, Grogu was actually in the temple around or before the Phantom Menace, as he was about 9 years old when the events of that movie take place. But to get to the point, we will see Grogu be much more competent with the Force this season, and I predict that when we see the Order 66 flashbacks, he will be capable of doing that on his own without the help of Luke or Ahsoka. Alright, now that we're all caught up, I'm going to get into what I think we'll see from the first half of this season, which will be up to episode 4 as it's an 8-episode season. I'm going to start this section by saying that I do think everything shown in the trailers so far is going to be contained to these 4 episodes. That's very much been Dave and John's formula in the past, where they show you the first half of their season in the trailers and leave the back half as a mystery. So with that in mind, I think we're going to start off with the Order 66 flashbacks actually. Dave and John get the fans very well and have no doubt seen the outstanding reaction to the scenes in the Kenobi show, the Book of Boba Fett, and even Season 1 of The Bad Batch. So I do think it's going to jump right into Grogu reliving the night the Jedi Order fell, and I do have to say, I expect this scene to feature nothing more than the 501st storming the temple. But I will be pleasantly surprised to see Hayden Christensen come through those doors ready to take on any Jedi that stand in his way if it so happens. But even if this fanboy dream comes true, it raises the question, how does Grogu get away if Anakin is that close to him? I certainly don't want another Reva situation, so is it the case that Grogu is not even in the same hall as that scene's taking place? Were the fan theories right, that he's watching all of this go down from some monitor in a safe place in the temple, maybe even in the company of the librarian Jocasta Nu? I don't think that's too much of a stretch, but regardless, Jon Favreau has done a good job of keeping the build-up vague so that we're going into it not knowing what to expect, and the hype is at a peak level. From there, I think we get back into the typical Mando stuff. I believe we'll get an episode of him just doing Mando things, whether that's chasing down pirates in space, or visiting an old friend, or maybe both. In the trailer, we see him visiting Pelimoto on Tatooine to acquire a droid for his modified N1 starfighter, but we're not quite sure when that'll take place because the final shot of the Book of Boba Fett, the N1 starfighter is jettisoning away from the iconic sand planet. Maybe it's something where the episode focuses on Mando and Grogu solely, and in the end he returns to Navarro after receiving a transmission from Greef Karga. Then we see Navarro get attacked, and that's when Paz Vizsla brings in the other Mandalorians to help Mando. Regardless of the order of those events, I'm pretty sure of one thing, and that's whatever episode we see Paz bring everyone to Navarro is going to be the final episode before we head to Mandalore for a big chunk of the season. I think there's a bit of a narrative that comes with that it's going to be Bo versus Din to end the season for the Darksaber and the Throne of Mandalore. But what if that's only the mid-season ending? As I said before, John and Dave love to only allude to the first half of their seasons in the trailers, and keeping that in mind, the big narrative has been Bo versus Din. This, and the fact that we know Giancarlo Esposito is certainly back and has promised big things to come from Moff Gideon, leads me to believe that we will actually see Moff Gideon escape his New Republic prison around episode 4 or 5, leading to the actual climax of the season where the Moff and whatever remains of his forces go and attack the Mandalorians. And I do want to add on before we move along that it is worth noting that Dave Filoni co-wrote episode 3 and episode 7 of this show, and that's where I'm looking for the big things to go down. So now that we have the first half of the season roughly outlined, I'm going to move on to the back half. And as I alluded to just a moment ago, this is where I see Moff Gideon coming back into the picture in a big way. I'm sure we'll see bits and pieces throughout the entirety of the season, but I think when he's free, he's going to be on a path for revenge, and we'll see that in the later half. Once Gideon is back, though, I do expect the inner conflict on Mandalore to be resolved, or at the very least, be sidelined for the bigger story. And I see that bigger picture as a couple different possibilities, but for one, you could have Moff Gideon come challenge either Bo-Katan or Din for the ruler of Mandalore and the Darksaber, but what I think is more likely, because I think that the Moff wants to obliterate Mandalore, is that he groups every last Star Destroyer he possibly can, every last stormtrooper he is loyal to him, and unleashes an all-out attack on Mandalore. It was made clear in season 1 and 2 that he has a big obsession with the planet and their different cultures, and I think he's going to want to destroy them this season. And before I dive into the specifics of what I think will go down, I did want to give a fair warning that I will be incorporating a leak from MakingStarWars.net regarding Moff Gideon into my theory, so if you like to go in fresh, thank you for sticking around up until now, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like and a sub on your way out, as well as what you're most excited for down in the comments below, and have a great day. Now we're going to get into the spoilers. So for those of you who stuck around, we're following up right where we left off, but this time I'm going to add that Jason Ward has said that Moff Gideon will receive his own set of Mandalorian armor this season, which he'll wear when he's around his Praetorian guards. And that bit of information makes me think that we have not seen the least of Moff Gideon's remnants, and that he has a huge army to get ready to invade Mandalore. So while that army's busy with the Mandalorians, I think we're going to see Moff Gideon and Din face off once again in the end of this season, only this time, Gideon will not be holding back, and I could see him getting Din down to a point of no return, but then Grogu comes in to save the day and becomes the next Mandalorian Jedi. I see this as a fitting end because not only does it evolve Grogu's character, but it sets up a bigger threat to come in Season 4, as I do think it's time to move on from Gideon after 3 seasons of him failing. But with that bigger threat could come Grand Admiral Thrawn and the other threats he comes with from the New Beyond that are to be introduced in the Ahsoka series later this year. And while all of this sounds amazing to me, I'm of course just speculating and putting together my ideal Season 3. So why don't you do the same and let me know your theories and hopes for Season 3 down in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, as well as subscribing to the channel so that you don't miss any future content, and make sure you have a great day.